I used to think my best friend was the one person I could trust above everyone else. She was my confidant, the one I shared my deepest thoughts with, and together, we created memories that felt like they'd last forever. We laughed at the same jokes, cried over the same disappointments, and supported each other through everything. Well, almost everything. Her name was Sarah. We met in college, and from the moment we crossed paths, it felt like fate had brought us together. She was confident, charismatic, had a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. People naturally gravitated towards her, and well, I was the quieter one, the observer. Together we balanced each other out. I thought I'd found someone who truly understood me. But I never saw the signs, never realized how much I was being taken for granted. It wasn't always this way, though. At first, everything was perfect. We'd spend hours talking about our future dreams, sharing our most personal desires, and exchanging our hopes for what we wanted to achieve in life. I shared everything with Sarah, the projects I was working on, the ideas I was passionate about, the things that kept me up at night thinking about what I could create, what I could do with my life. She always listened attentively, encouraging me with a smile or a reassuring word. But there was one thing I never expected. I never expected her to take my ideas and turn them into her own. I remember the first time it happened. We were working on a project for school together, something that was supposed to be a joint effort. We had been brainstorming for weeks, collaborating closely, when one day, Sarah came to me with a proposal. It was brilliant, or so I thought. She presented an idea, one that sounded eerily similar to something I had been working on privately for days. It was my idea, my concept, but she had put her name on it. At the time, I didn't want to believe it. I told myself I must have misremembered the details. After all, we were working so closely together. Maybe it was a coincidence, right? But then, as the weeks went by, the pattern continued. Each time I shared something I was working on, she seemed to have a way of making it her own. I started noticing small things, details that were unmistakably mine, but they were somehow slipping through her fingers and into her projects. The more I paid attention, the clearer it became. She wasn't just borrowing ideas, she was stealing them. And the worst part was, she wasn't even trying to hide it. She had learned how to take what was mine, twist it into something that looked slightly different, and then present it as her own, all while I stood by, silent. It hurt, but I couldn't bring myself to confront her. I kept telling myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just being too sensitive. But deep down, I knew something was off. Something wasn't right in this friendship. I had trusted her completely, shared everything with her, but here she was, taking everything I worked for and passing it off as her own. Little by little, I started to feel invisible, like my ideas didn't matter unless they were in her hands. It was a painful realization, but it wasn't until much later that I understood the full extent of what had been happening. As time passed, I began to notice something even more unsettling. Sarah wasn't just taking my ideas, she was presenting them to others as if they had come from her. The worst part? People were buying into it. They were praising her, congratulating her, and offering opportunities based on my work, while I stood in the background, silent and invisible. At first I tried to brush it off. After all, we were friends, right? Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, or maybe she was just excited and didn't realize what she was doing. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just some innocent mistake. I watched as Sarah's reputation started to grow, as she became the go-to person for new ideas and creative projects. But the more her success grew, the more I began to feel like I was being erased. One day, I overheard a conversation in the hallway. A group of mutual friends were discussing Sarah's latest project, a huge pitch she was preparing for a big company. They were all raving about it, saying how brilliant she was, how innovative her ideas were. But then, someone mentioned the concept she was pitching, and I froze. It was my concept. Word for word. My idea, the one I had shared with her months ago. I could feel the blood draining from my face as I realized that everyone, even those closest to us, had no idea where the true origin of those ideas came from. And Sarah, my best friend, had been playing the role of the genius, the innovator, the one with all the brilliant ideas. I wanted to confront her right then and there. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her why she was doing this to me, why she was stealing from someone who had always had her back. But fear held me back. What if she turned it around on me? What if I was the one who looked petty, jealous, or insecure? I didn't want to be that person, the one who accused their best friend of betrayal without clear proof. So I stayed quiet, but I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach, the one that told me something was seriously wrong. Over the next few days, the feelings of betrayal only intensified. I began to analyze every conversation, every project, every moment we had shared. And the more I thought about it, the more it became clear that Sarah wasn't just taking my ideas. She was using our friendship to manipulate me, to gain access to things she couldn't create on her own. Every time she needed inspiration, she would come to me, ask questions, and get me talking. Then she'd take whatever I said, spin it into something original, and present it as her own. It felt like a game to her, one in which she was always one step ahead of me. That's when I realized something crucial. If I didn't do something soon, she would keep doing this, and I would lose everything. But how could I expose her without ruining everything? Without losing the one person I thought I could trust most? This wasn't just about the ideas anymore. It was about the truth, about reclaiming my worth and my creativity. It was about showing everyone who Sarah truly was, not the sweet, charming friend everyone thought they knew, but someone who was willing to betray even the closest people for her own gain. I couldn't let this slide. Not anymore. I had spent too much time building trust, sharing my creativity, and supporting Sarah in her journey, and now she had taken it all, everything I had given her, and used it to climb higher, leaving me in her shadow. I was angry, but more than that, I was determined. I wasn't about to let her steal my ideas without facing the consequences. But how could I prove it? How could I expose the truth without making things worse? I needed a plan. I started thinking about everything we had done together. The projects, the brainstorming sessions, the late-night talks where we would dream up new ideas. The more I thought, the more it became clear. Sarah wasn't just stealing my ideas in a direct way. She was stealing my process too. Every time she had a project, she would come to me for advice or inspiration, and I would give it freely, trusting her like the friend I thought she was. But instead of using the ideas we discussed together to collaborate, she took them and used them as her own. I began to realize that the best way to expose her wasn't through anger or confrontation. It was through showcasing my own work, in a way that would make it clear who the true creator was. But there was a problem. Sarah wasn't just taking my ideas and presenting them to others. She was claiming them as her own, leaving no trace of where they came from. So, I had to be clever. I couldn't just tell people I had the original ideas. I'd need proof. I would have to outsmart her without her even knowing it. I knew I had to create something that no one could deny was mine. Something that would stand out, that would be unmistakably my work, and would expose Sarah for what she truly was, a thief. That's when I had my breakthrough. I had always been good at creating concepts that combined a mix of creative thinking and strategic planning. But Sarah wasn't a strategist. She was a performer, someone who excelled at presenting but not necessarily creating. And that's where my advantage lay. I decided to come up with something new, something different, something that Sarah wouldn't be able to mimic or steal without getting caught. It was time to turn her theft into my greatest victory. I spent days working on a new concept, one that was bold, innovative, and totally unlike anything we had discussed before. I made sure to keep it completely to myself, telling no one about the project, not even Sarah. The more I worked on it, the more confident I became. This idea was going to be my secret weapon. Once I had it fully developed, I would present it to the same people Sarah had presented my stolen ideas to. I would show them what true creativity looked like. And when they compared it to her work, they would see the difference, clear and undeniable. The plan was set. All I had to do now was wait for the right moment to strike. And I knew exactly when that moment would come. Sarah, in her typical fashion, was already working on another project, pitching another idea she had stolen from me, no doubt. I just needed to be patient and ready to act when the time was right. But as I worked on my project, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. This wasn't just about the ideas anymore. It was about trust, about loyalty, about friendship. How could someone who claimed to be my best friend do this to me? How could someone I had trusted with my thoughts and dreams turn around and use them for their own gain? The anger was still there, but it was starting to transform into something else, a quiet resolve. I wasn't just doing this to prove that Sarah had stolen my ideas. I was doing it to reclaim what was mine, to show everyone that I was the one with the true vision, the real creativity. The day had arrived. I had spent weeks perfecting my new project, keeping it entirely to myself, making sure there was no trace of it outside my own mind. Every detail was carefully crafted, every element thought through. It was different from anything I had ever done before. Bold, daring, and uniquely mine. It was ready. All I had to do now was wait for Sarah to present her latest project, the one I knew would be a carbon copy of one of my stolen ideas. And then, it happened. She called me over one afternoon, her eyes shining with excitement. "You have to see this," she said, her voice almost giddy. "I've been working on something amazing." I could already tell by the tone in her voice that she thought she had come up with something revolutionary. But I knew better. This was my idea, and now she was going to present it as her own. I kept my distance, pretending to be busy with other work, all the while keeping an eye on Sarah. I wanted her to think I had no idea what she was up to continue in her deceit without any hint of suspicion. I knew she would be proud of her new idea when she unveiled it. After all, she had been working on it for days, maybe weeks. She would show it to everyone, eager for praise, and I would be there, quietly observing, waiting for the perfect moment. I walked over to her desk, trying to mask my emotions, but inside, I felt the stirrings of frustration. She opened her laptop, proudly showing me the concept. The design was so close to the one I had shared with her months ago, I could almost feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. She had changed a few things, tried to make it look different, but I could see right through the layers of deception. It was my work, my ideas, my creativity. She had just polished them up, dressed them in a new coat of paint, and now she was passing them off as her own. "You like it?" Sarah asked, looking at me with a proud grin. I forced a smile, nodding as I tried to hide my growing anger. "It's good," I said, but the words felt hollow. "Really good." She beamed. "I knew you'd like it. I've been working on it non-stop." I nodded, but inside my mind was racing. This wasn't just about a stolen idea anymore. This was about trust, about integrity. I couldn't just sit there and let her get away with it. But I had to stay calm, stay collected. The plan was in motion, and I couldn't afford to make a rash move. I needed everyone to see her for what she truly was, a thief. And for that, I needed to bide my time. That night, after she had gone home, I went over my project again. My heart was pounding with anticipation. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The next day, I would present my work. I would show everyone that the true creator of the idea was not Sarah, but me. I wasn't just going to expose her, I was going to make sure everyone saw her theft for what it was. I went over every detail one last time. It was flawless. I made sure to include aspects that would be unmistakably linked to me, things that only I could have thought of. When people saw it, they would immediately know it was my work. There would be no question, no doubt in their minds. I was ready. The next morning, I walked into the office, my heart racing. I knew Sarah would be there, probably still basking in the praise for her new idea. But today was going to be different. Today, everything was going to change. I gathered a few of our colleagues, those who had seen our earlier projects, and told them I had something new I wanted to share. As I pulled up my presentation, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The moment was finally here. I clicked through the slides, showing them my concept, the one I had been working on for weeks. The reactions were immediate. They were impressed. Some even seemed stunned by how original and bold the idea was. They commented on the design, the thought behind it, the way it pushed boundaries. I could see the recognition in their eyes. This wasn't just another idea, it was mine, and it was brilliant. They saw it, they understood it, and they appreciated it. And then, just as I had hoped, Sarah walked in, her eyes lighting up as she saw the crowd gathered around me. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice eager. Before I could even answer, someone asked, "Sarah, is this your idea too?" The question hung in the air like a dagger. Everyone turned to Sarah, waiting for her response. She hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before she quickly regained her composure. "No," she said with a forced smile. That's not mine. But it's really great." Her voice was calm, but I could tell she was nervous. She had no idea what was coming next. The room was silent for a moment, but I could feel the tension building. They were all waiting for me to speak. And I did. "Actually, it's mine," I said, my voice steady but firm. "This is the idea I've been working on for the past few weeks. I've kept it under wraps, but I wanted to share it with all of you now." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. The eyes that had once been filled with praise for Sarah's brilliant idea were now shifting toward me. The truth was out. I wasn't just taking a stand for myself anymore. I was showing them who the real creator was. And I wasn't going to let anyone forget it. The room was still. There was a heavy silence after I dropped the bombshell. Everyone was staring at Sarah, and I could tell that she was struggling to hide her shock. Her smile faltered, and she took a step back, as if trying to distance herself from the situation. The tension was thick, and for a moment I thought time had frozen. "I don't know what you mean," Sarah stammered, her face turning pale. "I thought you." She trailed off, her words evaporating into nothingness. She had no defense. She had nowhere to hide. The others in the room exchanged uncertain glances, clearly confused about what had just happened. They didn't know the full story yet. They didn't know how deep this went. But they could sense something was off. The air was charged with suspicion, and it was impossible to ignore. "I mean, it's pretty clear, isn't it?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You've been passing off my ideas as your own for weeks now. You showed me your project, but it's just a watered-down version of what I've been working on. Everyone can see it." There was a murmur of agreement from the group. People nodded, slowly realizing the extent of Sarah's actions. Sarah tried to backtrack. "Look, I didn't mean to," she began, but I wasn't having it. I had no interest in hearing her excuses. "No, Sarah," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You did mean it. You took my work, you stole it, and now you're trying to take credit for it in front of everyone." The words came out more sharply than I intended. But they were the truth. She had betrayed me, and now I wasn't going to let her get away with it. There was a pause before one of our colleagues, Rebecca, spoke up. "Wait, hold on. Sarah, are you saying you didn't know this was—" She glanced at me, then back at Sarah. "Didn't know this was Claire's work?" Sarah's face reddened. She opened her mouth to speak, but closed it again. Her eyes flicked around the room, as if looking for someone to back her up, but no one said a word. No one came to her defense. They were all silently waiting for her to explain herself. But she couldn't. Not this time. Rebecca crossed her arms. "I'm sorry, but this is huge. We all saw you working on this idea. And it wasn't like this at first. You've made changes, sure, but the core concept is the same. I don't think you can deny it." Sarah's lips trembled, and for the first time since I had known her, I saw her vulnerable. She was cracking. Her confidence, the one that had gotten her so far before, was slipping away. The mask she had carefully crafted to hide her lies was falling apart, piece by piece. For a brief moment, I thought she might apologize. I thought she might come clean. But then she did something I wasn't expecting. She turned it around. "No, this is ridiculous," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "I've been working on this for weeks, and Claire is just jealous because I'm getting more attention for it. She's always been so controlling, always taking credit for everything we do together. And now she's trying to make me look bad." The words hit me like a slap. It was as if she was trying to flip the narrative, trying to make me the villain in this whole thing. She was manipulating the situation, turning my exposure of her theft into a personal attack on me. I had to stop myself from reacting, from letting her drag me into this twisted version of the story. I stood my ground. "No, Sarah. I've never been controlling. I've never tried to take credit for your work. You're the one who stole my ideas and tried to pass them off as your own. And now you're trying to twist this around to make me the bad guy. I won't let you do that." The room was tense, the eyes of everyone in the room fixed on us. I could see the disbelief on some faces, but there was also a sense of realization creeping in. They were starting to see Sarah for who she really was. The confident, charismatic front she had put up for so long was cracking, and the truth was slipping through the cracks. I could tell Sarah was frustrated, angry even, but there was nothing she could do. She was caught, and she knew it. She had nowhere to hide. She could keep talking, keep trying to deflect, but the damage was done. The truth was out there. "Well," Sarah said, her voice tight with fury, "you'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." Her words didn't shake me. In fact, they only solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about exposing her theft. It was about standing up for myself, for the work I had put in, and for the truth. I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation any longer. As Sarah stormed out of the room, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The tension that had gripped me for so long was gone, replaced with something else, a quiet confidence, the knowledge that I had done the right thing. The truth had come out. And no matter how hard Sarah tried to spin this, no one could deny what had really happened. The aftermath wasn't easy. Some of our colleagues were unsure how to react, unsure who to believe. But in time, the truth won. People came to me, offering support, telling me that they knew I had been the one behind the idea all along. And in the end, Sarah was exposed for what she truly was: a liar and a thief. But even with that victory, I knew there was more to come. The confrontation was just the beginning. I had uncovered Sarah's true nature, but I wasn't done. I had learned something important about myself, too. Standing up for the truth wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. After Sarah stormed out of the room, there was a strange silence that hung in the air. It was almost as if everyone was waiting for the next big move, wondering how I would handle the aftermath. For the first time in a long while, I felt a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. The truth had been spoken, and I had taken control of my own narrative. But I knew this wasn't over. The story didn't end with Sarah's outburst. There were consequences, and I wasn't naive enough to think I could avoid them. Over the next few days, the atmosphere around the office was tense. People were talking. Whispers followed me through the halls. Some offered support, others just watched from a distance, unsure of what to believe. It was clear that Sarah had begun to spin her own version of events, one that painted her as the victim. I knew that she would try to turn this around, make it seem like I was the one attacking her, the one causing all the drama. But I wasn't worried. The truth had already been laid bare. I started getting messages from colleagues, some I hadn't spoken to in a while, offering quiet support. "I always knew you were the one behind that idea," one of them wrote. Another said, "I'm sorry for what she did to you. She's done this before to others." It was comforting, but it also made me realize how many people had been silently watching, silently judging. Sarah wasn't the only one who had been playing the game. We all had, in our own ways. But as the days passed, the real consequences began to take shape. Sarah's behavior started catching up with her. At first, it seemed like she was brushing everything off, acting like nothing had happened, putting on a brave face. But I could see the cracks in her facade. She had always been the confident one, the one who held all the cards. But now, with her theft exposed, it was as if she was unraveling. People began to avoid her, and her projects started falling apart. She couldn't charm her way out of this one. The trust she had built up over the years started to crumble. One afternoon, as I was walking out of a meeting, I overheard a conversation between two of our senior team members. "I don't know how she thought she could get away with it. She's burned so many bridges, and now no one's going to work with her," one of them said. "It's a shame," the other replied. "She had potential. But when you start lying, stealing, it all catches up with you in the end." That hit me harder than I expected. On one hand, I was glad to see Sarah's actions were being recognized for what they were. But on the other, I felt a pang of sadness. We had been friends. We had shared dreams, ideas, and plans. Now, I was watching everything unravel because of her choices. But I couldn't focus on the past for too long. I had my own journey to continue. I had to stay focused on my work, on my goals. In the midst of all this drama, I had to remind myself why I had stood up for the truth in the first place. It wasn't just about exposing Sarah. It was about reclaiming my own power, my own voice. For so long, I had been the quiet one, the one who let people take credit for my ideas, let people walk all over me. But this time, I had stood up for myself, and that had made all the difference. As the weeks went by, the pressure started to mount for Sarah. She was pushed out of key projects, and I could tell she was getting desperate. The more she tried to salvage her reputation, the more obvious it became that she was struggling. Her confidence had completely shattered. I had witnessed her rise to the top before, but now I was watching her fall from grace, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and pity. Then came the email. It was brief, a simple message with a subject line that read, "Can we talk?" It was from Sarah. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to engage with her. After everything that had happened, I felt no need to hear what she had to say. But curiosity got the better of me. I replied, agreeing to meet. I told myself that this wasn't about reconciliation. It was about understanding where she stood now, and what she wanted from me, if anything. I had already moved on, but I needed closure. When we met, she looked different, vulnerable almost. There was no more bravado, no more arrogance. She was quiet, reserved. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would blow up the way it did." I didn't interrupt her. I just let her speak. "I guess I thought I could get away with it. I thought I was smarter than everyone else," she continued, her eyes darting to the ground. "But I was wrong, and now I've lost everything." It was hard to listen to her, knowing everything that had happened, all the hurt she had caused. But as she spoke, I realized something. She wasn't the same person I had known. There was no more manipulation in her words. She was owning up to her mistakes, acknowledging the truth. And while I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust her again, I also knew that I didn't need to. "Sarah," I said calmly, "I'm not here to make you feel worse. But you need to understand something. What you did wasn't just about stealing ideas. It was about trust. It was about respect. And you violated both. You have to live with that." She nodded, her eyes glassy. "I know, and I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking." There was a long pause. I wasn't sure what else to say. There was nothing left to say. She had apologized, but that didn't change what had happened. I had moved on, and I didn't need her apology to find peace. But it did feel like a final chapter, a conclusion to the story that had consumed me for so long. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said quietly, turning to leave. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The story was over. A few months had passed since that meeting with Sarah. Life, as it tends to do, moved on. I'd thrown myself into my work, into new projects, new ideas, things that felt right for me, and as much as I had thought the entire ordeal would haunt me, it didn't. If anything, it became a distant memory, something I could look back on not with bitterness, but with a sense of growth. I had learned so much from it, lessons I'd carry with me for the rest of my life. It was the first week of the new quarter when I received an unexpected invitation. It was from my boss. He wanted me to attend an exclusive meeting with senior management and some of our major clients. To be honest, I was surprised. I hadn't really expected to be included in such a high-level gathering. But in that moment, I realized how far I had come. A few months ago, I had been the quiet one, always in the background, watching as others took the credit for the work I had put in. Now, I was being recognized for the very things that had been stolen from me. When I walked into the conference room, I felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. I took my seat at the table, and as the meeting went on, I could see the difference in the way people treated me. They listened when I spoke, respected my opinions, and acknowledged my contributions. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I truly belonged. Then, in the middle of the meeting, something happened. My boss, who had always been one to stay neutral, suddenly brought up my project, one that Sarah had claimed as her own, the one I had worked tirelessly on. I could see Sarah sitting at the back of the room, trying to maintain a calm expression, but I knew the truth. And now everyone else would know it too. My boss spoke about the success of the project, the positive feedback from the clients, and how it had exceeded all expectations. Then he looked directly at me. "You know," he said, turning to face me, "this project wouldn't have been possible without your dedication and creativity. You put in the hard work, the ideas were yours, and the execution was flawless. I want to acknowledge that publicly. You truly made a difference, and it hasn't gone unnoticed." For a moment, the room was silent. Everyone was looking at me, and I could feel the weight of their gaze. But instead of feeling awkward or uncomfortable, I felt empowered. I had earned this recognition. I had fought for it. And now, I was finally getting what I deserved. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I could see the flush of color creeping up her neck. She hadn't expected this. I could feel a sense of satisfaction, not because of the discomfort it caused her, but because this moment marked the ultimate victory. Not over her, but over the fear and self-doubt that had held me back for so long. When the meeting ended, I didn't stick around to socialize. I had no need to. The validation I had been seeking had already been given to me. I walked out of that room with my head held high, knowing that everything had come full circle. The truth, I realized, wasn't just about exposing others. It was about revealing who you really are, your own worth, and standing firm in your own strength. I had done that, and I had done it for me. As the days passed, the office dynamics shifted. People now saw me for who I really was, someone with ideas, vision, and the courage to stand up for herself. Sarah, on the other hand, began to fade into the background. Her manipulation had caught up with her, and the respect she once commanded from the team was gone. No longer could she steal other people's ideas and walk away unscathed. It was clear that the damage had been done, and yet I didn't feel a sense of triumph over her downfall. I didn't need to relish in her failure to feel successful. My victory wasn't about bringing her down. It was about rising above the situation, owning my worth, and refusing to let someone else define my success. That was the true power I had gained. The ability to let go of what didn't serve me and to step into my own light. I had reclaimed my ideas, my confidence, and most importantly, my voice. The days of second-guessing myself, of letting others take credit for my hard work, were over. Now I knew my value, and I wasn't afraid to show it. The victory wasn't just in exposing Sarah's betrayal. It was in the strength I had found within myself. As for Sarah, I no longer held any anger towards her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. But me? I was moving forward, and nothing, no one, would ever make me doubt my worth again. The end of this chapter wasn't just about bringing justice to a betrayal. It was about embracing the future, and knowing that no one, no matter how close they were, could ever take away my ideas, my dreams, or my success.